Hey there, Nick here. In this video, we're going to go over how to send a shell command to all of your active tmux panes, windows, and all of your sessions. This could be pretty useful if you just want to execute a shell command in all of those at once. It's even going to support this idea of optionally killing a process that might be running in a specific pane. Maybe you have something like NeoVim running or htop, but you still want to have some command get run. In this case here, yeah, there's going to be an optional flag to let us control that. By the way, there is a built-in feature from tmux. We're not going to be focusing that on this video, but they have synchronized panes that you can do here. So if I do a split and we do something like echo hello world, then yeah, this is going to start echoing to all the different panes that we have here for this specific window. But one limitation here, and by the way, this is not a knock on the actual feature. It's useful for what you want it to do, but it's not going to replicate that out to all the different windows and all the different sessions that you have. Also, it's kind of interesting too, if I go back and disable this one, let's do another split here and maybe enable htop in one of them, maybe just run NeoVim in another one here. And now we go and enable this again, then yeah, the interesting behavior here is as I hit the H key in this one pane here, it's actually sending that H key over to htop and also NeoVim as well. And if you have a whole bunch of different processes running, then yeah, it could be a little bit different behavior here. So each one's going to process those keys differently. And again, if you're just doing this into one window for a whole bunch of different panes, then using this feature is really useful for that because, you can probably control what processes that you have running. But in my case here, where, I just wanted to run a single shell command in all of my different windows, panes, etc., then yeah, this just wasn't going to work for my use case here. Now, you might be thinking like, well, what are you even doing like that requires this type of setup here? And in my case here, I love to use tmux. I have a whole bunch of different sessions, a whole bunch of different windows, a whole bunch of different panes. Let's say maybe there's 30 or 40 of those shell sessions running in those panes. And maybe I'm running NeoVim in some of them, maybe I'm not. But, let's say I update my dot files, right? By the way, which are up on GitHub, all the scripts that we're going to go over today, it is available here. I'll link to that stuff in the description here. But yeah, let's say I update my Z shell profile or my RC file or my aliases, and now I have to go and basically source in those files in 40 different, tmux panes. That's a little bit tedious. And yeah, so the solution we're going to go over will allow us to do that all in one shot with an alias too. For example, I've got this one set theme script here. Right now I'm running Tokyo Night Moon, but let's just say I wanted to switch to Groovebox Dark Medium. It kind of looks like everything updated perfectly here. And by the way, this alias here is new. We're going to go over this in the video as well. But, if I just do Control R to bring up FCF, that didn't get reloaded there. And also, in this case, we can't see it now, but, here it will work. So NeoVim is set up to use Groovebox here. But if we go back to Tokyo Night here, which is Tokyo Night Moon, then yeah, we can see that everything got switched, but NeoVim did not. And it's not as simple as just doing like a color scheme switch on NeoVim. Like other Lua things need to run for this to work properly. So I found myself switching themes. Like I'd have to go into NeoVim and then close it and then reopen it. And now it's back to the theme that I want. But yeah, with the script that we're going to run here, it is going to potentially be able to kill NeoVim so that, you'll be able to open up NeoVim again or whatever, process that you want here. And, the theme will be activated there automatically. So cool. If that sounds good, let's get cracking here. We'll take a look at some of the code, see how it works. Feel free to use it, modify it, tweak it. We're also going to go over some stuff, features you could add to it that are not even implemented into the script in case you just have slightly different use cases. So in this case here, I'm going to go to my dot files. Again, they're up on GitHub. I'll leave a link to that one. But in this case here, the command is called tmux shell command. It's like literally just a shell script here, not super long at all, 50 lines of code with comments, etc. Some help menus as well. But yeah, let's get cracking here and see how it works. Actually, maybe even before we jump into the code, let's actually run it to see how it works. So in this case, if you try to run this command here, then it is going to give us a help menu if you don't put in any command. So it expects you to actually pass in some type of command because, yeah, we're running some command, so it's not going to work when you don't send in anything. So we have a couple of different ways that we can call this basically. You can just, pass in your command, and that's going to run the command. Notice here that I do have NeoVim open above me. So if I just do something like, let me go back to here. Yeah, we just rerun this one here. I don't know, one easy example or a simple example, just to who am I, right? This is going to echo back out Nick here. It's actually not going to do it in the current shell. We'll see why in a second here. But if I jump over to this other window here, you can see it got replicated out. And if I go to, I don't know, maybe one of these example apps here, here we have, who am I, Nick, whatever. I was playing around a little bit before the video. Pay no attention to how crazy this looks on video. Normally my window is literally 4 times the size of this one. So this is normally not placed there all the way to the right. But yeah, what's pretty neat about this one, again, going back, this allowed us to play around with this without actually killing any active processes. That could be useful depending on what you're doing, right? But let's say that you do want to kill processes here. Like let's say you want this NeoVim instance and all the other NeoVim instances that you might have open. Let's just go to this example apps one, maybe Flask here or whatever. Let's just say that NeoVim is open here. Maybe you're in like the README file for this project, something like that. And now we go back to the dot files here and we just want to run the same exact commands here, or, you can also do different commands as well. Let's just like do something different for fun. But yeah, now we can pass in that optional kill flag here. And maybe the command that we want to echo out here is just literally hello world here. So we can just do something like that. It demonstrates how you can do it with a command that might have spaces. But yeah, let's go in this case here. It is going to prompt us, by the way, and it's going to be like, hey, by the way, all processes running in any tmux shell session, this could be NeoVim, etc., they're going to be killed. Maybe save your work. That would be a good idea potentially. So are you sure? Yes or no? So if you hit no to this one, then yeah, it's just going to abort there and not actually do it. But yeah, if we go back here, rerun it, and then we hit yes, then you can see here, in this case, it did actually kill NeoVim. It ran our command as well. It also ran it in the current shell here too, which is pretty neat. If we go back to that other example here, you can actually see this is actually pretty cool too. Like NeoVim just lets you know that it caught like a sig term in this case. And then, yeah, we have our echo hello world and things are just working pretty nicely. I will mention that in this case, it is sending a sig term. It's just using, the Linux kill command there with no arguments here. I don't want to do something like a kill 9. That's a little bit too crazy. So we'll try to do a sig term first, which is pretty nice. That's a graceful shutdown in case your application needs to do something a little bit for cleanup purposes. So now that we know a little bit how the script works, and by the way, I should mention here, we don't need to run it again, but if we do, technically, I guess we could, just to see why not. So let's go back to NeoVim here, and then we'll go to this command just to show, the other option here is you can just do auto kill 1. So in this case here, if we do auto kill 1, you may guess like, this is literally the same as before, except it's not going to prompt you for the actual kill. So in this case, if we were to run it and we just let it rip, then, we expect NeoVim on the window above us to just go away, and then it will. And that could be useful if you just want to call this script from another script and you don't want to have to like interactively type in yes to accept that. You can just pass in that environment variable to do it there, which could be pretty helpful. So yeah, let's go and actually take a look here a little bit at the script, see how it works, break it down a bit, and then you can modify it if you need to. But yeah, all right. So, there's a lot of like boilerplate things unrelated to this actual feature here. I've done videos about some of this stuff in the past. I'll try to link cards for the ones that are appropriate, but it's like, in this case, we're just doing some standard things so that, the script fails. If certain things fail, variables need to be set, etc. Then we're just like looping over all the arguments that get passed in, because maybe you want to pass in -- kill. It's optional, right? If we do, then we're actually just setting this variable here to be populated. And then in any case here, it's like, well, we're looping through all the arguments passed in, but we don't want the -- kill to be passed into whatever command that you're passing in. So this just handles that. So basically, -- kill is going to be handled internally by the script. And then all the other arguments that are going to be passed into the command here are basically all set up over here. So then when we run the command, it's not going to include the -- kill here. And then, we just have a little bit of help here. If there's an empty command, basically you didn't pass anything in, it's going to let us know a couple ways you can potentially use the script and then exit out unsuccessfully here because again, it expects a command to be passed in. And then we also have a little bit of protection here, right? Just saying, hey, by the way, yes, no prompt, things are going to be killed. And then it's like, yep, if it's anything but yes, then we'll just abort here and quit out the script here. In this case, I'm using exit 0 implicitly here because it's not necessarily an error that you wanted to cancel that. That's why I didn't use exit 1 here. And yeah, the condition here basically is, if the -- kill flag is set, and also, we just need to make sure here that auto kill is also not set. That's, the opposite there basically, because yeah, if it's auto killed, then this whole condition is going to pass through, not prompting us, which is exactly what we want. And then here really is the, meat and potatoes of the script here. A lot of interesting things happening, and we're going to break this one down and then run things in the terminal directly just so we can see the output of how things are. And I think like right away, just to see the output of how things are, we should probably run this command here. So this is going to give us some information that could be useful to see before we even proceed further with the logic of the script. So here, I'm just going to run this one, and it is going to output all the different panes and all the different PIDs of the things running in those panes for all the different windows and for all the different sessions. So I've got a couple of different sessions named different things, contracts, Docker example apps, basically all the names that you see here, .files, my blog, Plutos, et cetera, and we have all of them here. But then we also have things like the window index and the pane index. That's what this like 1.1 or, 1.2 is. And by the way, this is literally what the format is here, is what we see in the output. And then finally, we also just have the PID, the process ID of whatever is running in that specific pane. And what's cool about the way tmux set this up is that, you can put whatever format that you want. Like for example, if I just rerun this command here, and let's just say that you didn't care about anything, like you just wanted the PID or whatever, then you can totally do that and you'll just get the PID back. So, all of these names here are provided by tmux. You can go and check the documentation to see what's available. But I feel like, this kind of gives us all, useful information. Technically, the script really isn't using much else besides the PID, but it's useful to know that this information is here in case you just wanted to have some extra custom logic to be like, maybe if the session name is something, then maybe you don't want to have it apply to that session name. So you can just exempt that from the list there. You can even add an extra argument to handle that. Again, that didn't really do it for me in terms of use cases, but you can totally do that, things like that if you'd like. But yeah, in that case, let's go back to the original output here, right? We have all the different things. But really what this boils down to is, if you take a look here at the outputs, then all of this contains no spaces, and then we have a space, and then we have a PID. So we can actually just loop over this output here, basically line by line. And in this case, we're going to have two different variables, like the pane, and then also the PID. Now the pane in this case is literally all this information on the left. So, just going to any one of these lines, like that would be considered the pane here, and then that's the PID over here. So then we just have those variables basically available. It's almost like deconstructed in other languages here. And then we can just do whatever logic that we need to do, which is essentially, this is the hero of the story here. We're going to send some keys in, basically the command. And then, yeah, it depends though. Like, well, let's first maybe handle some of the logic first before we go over sending those keys in to run those commands here. So what's pretty interesting is that, we have this one PID that is here, and that's, the output from list panes, but that PID is always going to be your shell. So in my case, I am running Z shell. So, we can demonstrate this one pretty quickly, I suppose, just by maybe echoing out, let's say just PID for now. That's not going to help us because it's literally just, a process ID. But let's go and just rerun this here. Our commands here, let's just do the echo hello world run, sure. Well, let's not do it with kill because it's going to be annoying having to hit yes and whatever. We can set auto kill if we want. But, in this case, we have all of these different PIDs here. And now let's actually see what those process names are. And by the way, this could be interesting in case you want to modify the script. It's not in the script now because we don't need it. But, we can do a PSP on this PID. And then I think it's -o command equals with no value. I'm pretty sure. This should now output the actual command that is running for that PID. So in this case, you can just see Z shell, Z shell, Z shell, Z shell for all of them here. But let me go back to here and, let's just make sure we're not cheating here and actually open up NeoVim. And then, well, you can see too, literally NeoVim was open up here, but there's still no NeoVim output here. And by the way, if you just wanted to get the actual command binary instead of all different arguments, you can use COMM. In this case, I don't think it's going to make a difference here. Well, it did remove the leading dash, which is actually pretty useful in some cases. But in that case, maybe this will make more sense once you start seeing other things there. So where I'm going with this one is, the PID is always going to be Z shell or whatever. But you don't want to kill your Z shell process here in all of these because then things are just going to die out, right? You're going to lose your shell sessions and all the panes or whatever. So really what you want to do is see if this PID has a child PID. And here you can use pgrep capital P here on some PID ID and then see that. So instead of just monkeying around in the terminal, since we have the code set up to do this, let's actually just go and check this one out. So what we could do here now is just maybe say, all right, let's go and back here and say these things are uncommented here. And then we can just echo out something like the PID and then also the child PID. And then we'll start with this and just see how we go. Ignore all the different shell check things. Of course, these are problems, but they're not problems that are going to be actually problems. But it is a little bit distracting. So let me just go and maybe disable all sorts of different things here. We do this, and now these things are going to go away for this buffer, so we don't get distracted. Sorry for the side effect here. I'm still getting super new to NeoVim setup. But in any case, now, yeah, let's rerun this and see what we get back. Here we can start immediately seeing that, hey, by the way, we've got all these different processes running in all the different panes, but some of them have a child process here. And, this is where it could be useful to use that PSP here on the PID. And then we'll go and take a look here at the command here. Actually, we don't want to do it on the PID. We want to do it on the child PID because we want to actually see what that is. So now if we rerun this here, we can see that everything is blowing up. What did I do wrong? PS-P on the child PID. Oh, because I guess what's happening here is if there is no child PID, then it's trying to still do this, so things are breaking. So let's just quickly hack in some code here, and we'll just say, we'll just make sure that we have a child PID before we do that, and then this should work. I'm guessing here. Let's see. So rerun this and see what happens. Conditional binary. What did I do? Oh, yeah, duh. Quotes would be helpful if they're in the right spot. Should have saw that from the syntax highlighting. But yeah, in this case here, you can see a majority of them don't have a, well, let's also put in, whatever. I was going to say we can put in another echo here, just it's a little bit easier to see, things being separated. Yeah, you can see most of these, they have no children, and then it's boom. We have, this one's kind of interesting. It's like the active pane that we're in, like literally running this script, that counts as a child here. But you can also see like NeoVim, I open that up in a directory. These are the two PIDs here, the root PID for the Z shell session, and then as also NeoVim itself. So like when we actually want to do the kill here, we want to really kill the child PID, not the parent PID here. So in that case, that's why we have all these conditions here. And I guess even weirdly enough, like before we get into the actual script, it could be useful just to say, if you needed to do something different, like maybe you don't want NeoVim ever killed or something, you can just have extra logic in here where now you can actually do something like, maybe it could be more useful to have com here instead of command. And then in that case, it's just going to show like literally like nvim. It doesn't care about the arguments that you passed in this case, dot for the current directory, but that could also be like a really long file path or something like that. So, if you have like 20 instances of Vim or NeoVim open, then yeah, maybe the arguments are different. So you don't want to compare against the full command, but maybe just com is what you want for the binary name. Again, these are all options you can do. Then you can have some if conditions to be like, if the output of this is NeoVim or whatever, then skip it. And yeah, you can all go crazy there, do whatever you need to do. But yeah, let's go back to some of this code here that actually exists in the script. And yeah, so in this case here, that's basically what these conditions are doing here, where it is saying basically, yeah, well, if we're going to be killing stuff, so we passed in dash dash killed, and we actually have a child PID, then yeah, let's just run the kill command here on that child, and then also track that it was killed. So let's kill some children. Nice. I'm sure that's going to put me on some lists here for the YouTube video in terms of what I just said, in the context of, Linux processes here. But then it's like, okay, cool. Now we have the dead child, and we know that they were killed. And then now it's going to be like, okay, let's send keys in. But we really need, again, some protection here because we aren't always going to be passing in kill, right? But if there's no children at all, then yeah, we can send the command in directly. That is totally fine, right? If NeoVim is not running, then we know it's something just like a regular shell session or whatever. And then we can just send in our command and we're going to be good to go. That's what this is basically. But then also like, yeah, if it was killed, again, differences between Z and N here, if this is actually filled out here, in which case, if we did kill something here, then this will be filled out. And again, if there was no children or no child PID there, then yeah, that's how that works with dash Z. But in any case here, yeah, if something was killed, then like, we know we still need to also run the command here as well. So that's what those conditions are set up here. And then again, this is just, shorter syntax. So basically, very similar. Like we could have written with if then, end like this instead of just doing the and there. But in any case here, yeah, this is also a nice, really built-in behavior from tmux where we can just do send keys. Where are we sending it to? Where we're sending it to this pane here. And then, yeah, the command is going to be whatever you passed in. And this interesting characters on the right here are basically just sending in the enter key. So if we didn't pass in this, if we just set it off to be just this, then it will input the command that you want to run into each of the prompts, but it won't actually run it, which is also pretty useful. Maybe you want to even modify the script to have that as an optional argument. So in this case, if you run it now, then you can see if we go to over here, look, it's in our actual prompt, but it wasn't executed, which is again pretty cool. Like, cause maybe, I don't know, you need to do some custom things or whatever, but yeah, that's there as an option if you need it. But really that is going to do it for the script itself. But, earlier in the video, we kind of talked about like, wouldn't it be useful to source in your profile or RC file or aliases or whatever? And like, I don't know about you, but like, I didn't want to have to type in like all sorts of different like long source commands and source this thing and do the other thing, every single time. So what I ended up doing here was, yeah, in my aliases, I had an alias for quite some time here, which is just, SZ, which in my mind is like source Z shell. And, I can run that, and that's going to do that in the current, shell that I'm in here, but that's not going to replicate it out to all of them. But look, we have this nice little script that we can use. We know we can pass in kill if we want here. And yeah, in this case, then this is going to actually source this in and then do the things here. And it is going to allow us to run this across all of the stuff. So let me just go here and just run capital SZ. And then in this case, we would expect this is to die out here up front and then boom. But here, I actually, before I do it, I didn't want to do the auto kill here because it's like, I don't know, there could be a case where maybe you actually do want to make sure you know what you're doing before this one, or maybe you just forget, right? Maybe you have an active NeoVim session open and you just forgot, but this is the thing that prompts you to remind you to save your work or whatever. In this case, let's actually do it up. And yeah, this is going to do it. There goes NeoVim up top here. It'll let us know that we caught it, and then we are good to go here. So in this case, then yeah, we are nicely set up. And to demonstrate that this actually works here, let me go and modify. Let's see, we can go into the profile here, I suppose, and then we'll just do something like echo new profile stuff here, and that should execute right every time we do it. But let's go back to NeoVim, open it up, and then go down here, and then we'll do our ZZ or SZ again, and then yep, we want to do it. Sounds good. Then that's going to be there, and we can see that new stuff got executed here, which is exactly what we want. So if we go back to the profile here, let's get rid of that. And yeah, just to demonstrate that things work the way we want for the set theme script now. So yeah, if we were to go to like set theme, and then in this case, let's go to, I don't know, Groovebox dark medium, then this is going to do this. And then it's like, hey, by the way, you can just run this alias here, and that is going to kill NeoVim here again if we say yes. And then in this case, it does take a little second or two to run on my machine at least. The next time we open up NeoVim, then it's good to go. I suppose the script could be modified to maybe keep track of what was run using that PSP, com trick there, and then maybe let's just like reevaluate that command afterwards to restore it. I didn't really care too much about that, but that could be a potential improvement. So, for the sake of this video here, maybe that ends up in my dot files at some point. So, I would suggest checking out the actual dot files here. It's in local bin, and then it's going to be under this here. And again, file names may change, so the paths might be different or whatever, but this will always be the latest copy of that in case it gets modified in the future. So with that said, yeah, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer all of them. For now, I'm going to go back to Tokyo Night Moon here, and then there we go. We are good, back in business. Let me just go and redo this, and then we are good to go. Nice. So yeah, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Really does help a lot. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.